Good evening, friends. Good evening, fiends. Good evening, Dovahkiin Supremes. Welcome back to Abitlate, where we are continuing our nerdy dive into some Skyrim Elder Scrolls lore, finding out about the origins of enchanting and conjuring and all that fancy stuff. You know it was volatile in the beginning because we're dealing with untested magics here with spirits of the dead, soul gems, spirits of things that have died, but, whoops, last time we kind of infused a Quill with a Daedric spirit, Feyfolken. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, probably, and we're going to find out in tonight's part 2 of the 3-part series, Feyfolken. So do get comfy, get cozy, settle in for tonight's story. Make sure you have your animal familiars around you, coffee, tea, whatever beverage you need to enjoy tonight's story. Without further ado, let's get into Feyfolken, Volume 2. After the test had been given and Vongeldak and Taxim had demonstrated their knowledge of elementary conjuration, the great sage told them that they were free to enjoy the day. The two lads, who most afternoons fidgeted through their lessons, refused to leave their seats. Well, yeah, because you left them on a cliffhanger, old great sage. You told us that after the test, you'd tell us more of your tale about the scribe and his enchanted quill, said Taxim. You've already told us about the scribe, how he lived alone in his battles with the temple secretary over the bulletin he scripted for posting. Yeah, because he had, spelling errors in it. And how he suffered from the Crimson Plague and couldn't speak. When you left off, his messenger boy had just had his master's quill enchanted with the spirit of a Daedra named Feyfolken, added Vongeldak to the aid of the great sage's memory. He really is a teacher's pet. But also, Vongeldak, thank you for that great summary of what we read last time. Super appreciate it. As it happens, said the great sage, I was thinking about a nap. Me too, same. However, the story does touch on some issues of the nature of spirits and thus is related to conjuration, so I'll continue. Wow, thanks. Thanks for keeping your word, sir. Tharbad began using the quill to write the temple bulletin, and there was something about the slightly lopsided, almost three-dimensional quality of the letters that Tharbad liked a lot. Into the night, Tharbad put together the Temple of Ariel's bulletin. For the moment, he washed over the page with the Feyfolken quill. It became a work of art, an illuminated manuscript crafted of gold, but with good, simple, and strong vernacular. All spelled correctly? I sure hope so. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. The sermon excerpts read like poetry, despite being based on the archpriest's workmanlike exhortation of the most banal of Elysian doctrines. The obituaries of the two temples' chief benefactors were stark and powerful. Pitifully mundane deaths transitioned into world-class tragedies. Oh no, that the two big benefactors died too. What's gonna happen? Anyway, Tharbad worked the magical palette until he nearly fainted from exhaustion. At 6 o'clock in the morning, a day before deadline, wow, that is inspirational though, he handed the bulletin to Gorgos for him to carry to Alpheus, the temple secretary. As expected, Alpheus never wrote back to compliment him or even comment on how early he had sent the bulletin. Does it matter though? She would only respond if he made mistakes. It didn't matter. Oh good, it doesn't matter. Tharbald knew it was the best bulletin the temple had ever posted. Good work is its own reward. Don't buy an expensive enchanted quill worth thousands of dollars to impress the temple secretary who you don't care about but whose opinion you value deeply. That was the drama last time. At 1 o'clock on Sundays, Gorgos brought him many messages. Oh, people are liking it. The bulletin today was so beautiful. When I read it in the vestibule, I'm ashamed to tell you, I wept copiously, wrote the archpriest. I don't think I've seen anything that captures Ariel's glory so beautifully before. The cathedrals of Firsthold pale in comparison. My friend, I prostrate myself before the greatest artist since Galliel. It's a little much, but okay. The archpriest was, like most men of the cloth, given to hyperbole. I can tell. Still, Tharbald was happy with the compliment. More messages followed. All of the temple elders and 33 of the parishioners, young and old, had all taken the time to find out who wrote the bulletin and how to get a message to congratulate him. And there was only one person they could go through for that information, Alpheus. Imagining the dragon lady besieged by his admirers filled Tharbad with positive glee. she certainly ran so much space in your head for free. But I'm glad she does, otherwise we wouldn't have this story. He was still in a good mood the next day when he took the ferry to his appointment with his healer Telemachiel. The herbalist was new, a pretty Redguard woman who had tried to talk to him. Well, I mean, yeah, she's going to, she's your healer. Even after he gave her the note reading, "My name is Tharbad Holzik, and I have an appointment with Telemachiel for 11 o'clock. Please forgive me for not talking, but I have no voice box anymore." That doesn't mean you can't communicate, though. "Anyway, has it started raining yet?" she asked cheerfully. "The diviner said it might." Tharbad frowned and shook his head angrily. Why was it that everyone thought that mute people liked to be talked to? Did soldiers who lost their arm like to be thrown balls? It was undoubtedly not a purposeful, cruel behavior, but Tharbad still suspected that some people just like to prove that they were okay too. Really? Like, she's a healer. Why would she, by default, want to make you feel terrible? Like no one talks to you. She's trying, man. You're just a grumpy old guy. The examination itself was routine horror. Telemachiel performed the regular invasive torture, all while chatting and chatting and chatting. I just think he's reading into it. "You ought to try talking once in a while. That's the only way you'll see if you're getting better. If you don't feel comfortable doing it in public, you should try practicing it by yourself," said Telemachiel, knowing her patient would ignore her advice. She knows him well. "Try singing in the bath. That's fun. You'll probably find you don't sound as bad as you think." Tharbad left the examination with the promise of test results in a couple of weeks. On the ferry ride back home, Tharbad began thinking about the next week's temple bulletin. What about a double border around the last Sunday's offering plate announcement? Ooh, getting graphic, I like it. Putting the sermon in 2 columns instead of 1 might have interesting effects. Oh my gosh, just stop. It was almost unbearable to think that he couldn't get it started until Avies had sent him the information. When she did, it was with the note. "Last bulletin a little better. Next time, don't use the word fortuitous in place of fortunate." He still messed up. Love it. "The words are not, if you look them up, synonymous." She has a point. Like, that is the temple's public-facing words. Like, you gotta get them right and spelled right. I mean, also, by the way, if you weren't here last time, this is again in all caps, which means she means business. She's very brief and to the point, which I gotta appreciate. He gets paid, she gets paid. They don't have to be, whatever. Anyway, if that was an email, that'd be fun. In response, Tharbad almost followed Telemachiel's advice by screaming obscenities at Gorgos. Instead, he drank a bottle of cheap wine, composed and sent a suitable reply, and fell asleep on the floor. Why do you need to reply? Just do the work. At least it was civil, I guess. Could have been an angry drunk letter. The next morning, after a long bath, in which he didn't sing, I'm guessing, Tharbad began to work on the bulletin. His idea for putting a light shading on the effect of special announcement section had an amazing textural effect. Alphiers always hated the extra decorations he added to the borders, but using the Feyfolken quill, they look strangely powerful and majestic. Cool. Gorgos came in with a message from Alphiers at that very moment, as if in response to his thought. Tharbad opened it up. It simply said, "I'm sorry." All caps again. Tharbad kept working. Alphiers' note he put from his mind, sure that she would soon follow it with the complete message. "I'm sorry that no one ever taught you to keep right hand and left hand margins the same length," or "I'm sorry we can't get someone other than a weird old man as scribe for our bulletin." It didn't matter what she was sorry about. The column from the sermon notes rose like massive pillars of roses, crowned with unashamedly ornate headers. The obituaries and birth announcements were framed together with a spherical border as a heartbreaking declaration of the circle of life. The bulletin was simultaneously both warm and avant-garde. Are there terms like avant-garde in Elder Scrolls lore? Like, is that a thing? Well, it's a thing for us, so I guess we know what that means. Looking back? It was a masterpiece. When he sent it off to Alphiers late that afternoon, he knew she'd hate it and was glad. Oh my god. The space he lets her take up in his head. Tharbad was surprised to get a message from the temple on Lourdes. Before he read the content, he could tell from the style that it wasn't from Alfie's. The handwriting wasn't Alfie's usual belligerent slashing style, which is efficient, if mean, and it wasn't all in Alfie's usual capital letters, which read like a scream from oblivion. That's ironic, no? Tharbad, I thought you should know Alfie's isn't at the temple anymore. She quit her position yesterday, very suddenly. My name is Vanderthil, and I was lucky enough, let me admit it now, I begged pitifully, to be your new temple contact. I'm overwhelmed by your genius. I was having a crisis of faith until I read last week's bulletin. This week's bulletin is a miracle. Enough, I just wanted to say I'm honored to be working with you. Vanderthil. Oh no, what a change. What a change. The response on Sundays after the service even astonished Tharbad. The archpriest attributed the massive increase in attendance and collection plate offerings entirely to the bulletin. Tharbad's salary was quadrupled. Good, he's got to pay for that Quill somehow. Or, he depleted his savings, built him up again. Gorgos brought over 120 messages from his adoring public. The following week, Tharbad sat in front of his writing plank, a glass full of fine Torvali mead at his side, staring at the blank scroll. He had no ideas. The bulletin, his child, his second wife, bored him. Oh my God. The sermons of the archbishop were absolute anathema, and the deaths and births of the temple patrons struck him as entirely pointless. Blah, 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 he thought as he scribbled on the page. Wow, he's in the artistic dumps right now. He knew he wrote the letters B-L-A-H, B-L-A-H. The words that appear on the scroll were, a necklace of pearl on a white neck. What? He scrawled a jagged line across the page. It appeared in though that damned beautiful Feyfolken quill. Glory to Ariel. Tharbad slammed the quill and poetry spilled forth in a stream of ink. He stretched over the page, blotting over everything, and the vanquished words sprung back up in a different form, even more exquisite than before. Every daub and splatter caused the document to whirl like a kaleidoscope before falling together in glorious asymmetry. There was nothing he could do to ruin the bulletin. Feyfolken had taken over. He was a reader, not an author. Now, asked the great sage, what was Feyfolken from your knowledge of the school of conjuration? What happened next? Cried Vongeldak. First, tell me what Feyfolken was, and then I'll continue the story. This is so cruel, we still don't know what it does. That was You said it was a Daedra, said Taxim, and it seems to have something to do with artistic expression. Was Feyfolken a servitor of Azura? But the scribe may have been imagining all this, said Vongelduck. Perhaps Feyfolken is a servitor of Shigarath, and he's gone mad. Or the quill's writing makes everyone who views it, like all the congregation at the Temple of Ariel, go mad. Hermaeus Mora is the Daedra of knowledge, and Hersine is the Daedra of the wild, and the Daedra of revenge is Bogathaya, pondered Tassim, and then he smiled. Feyfolken is a servitor of Clavicus Vile, isn't he? Very good, said the old sage. How did you know? It's his style, said Tassim. Assuming he doesn't want the power of the quill now that he has it, what happens next? I'll tell you, said the great sage, and continued his tale. However, friends and fiends and Dovahkiin Supremes, we are ending this one on a cliffhanger like he did last time. We'll be continuing the story in the final volume 3, which is coming soon, but the story is getting interesting and oh my goodness, I'm curious what happens next. And if you are too, keep your eyes peeled for the next installment. But if you need more Skyrim or Elder Scrolls lore, there are plenty of stories from that on the channel so far, and I'll be adding more as we go. There's also fairy tales and spooky stories, old ghost stories, and classic scary things. So check those out too if that's your style. But for now, off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, stay spooky, my friends. Good night.